Well, Humans has finally returned with a much bigger focus on character and more expansion of the world overall. Hey guys, remember the season premiere of Humans, Series 2, Episode 1, and I was definitely very much looking forward to this premiere, not just because of the fact I love this show, as you guys know, I've waited so long for it. I mean, it's been a long time since Humans is back. The last time I talked about it was the summer of 2015, and a lot of time has passed since then. I know you guys really did dig my reviews back then, and I was definitely looking forward to watching this season again. And I'm glad it came back when it did, because I think Humans came back at exactly the right time. Because even though the show I think is so great, I think it's really gone under the radar of many people, and I don't think that it's the writer's fault. I don't think it's the show's fault. I think it's Westworld. I think it's because of how successful Westworld was. People are kind of tired of the robot thing. They don't want to watch it, and I think it's an unfair comparison, especially with this episode, because the direction we're going in is completely different than that of Westworld, and I really did love this premiere. They really did all they could to step it up in every way possible. Was there a bit too much going on? Yes, I will definitely say that, and we'll get into that, but I did really, overall, really like this premiere. I like there's a more tighter focus on the synthetics in this season. I'm looking forward to seeing where they're really going to go with that. But let's just get into this episode, because there is definitely a lot to talk about. A lot happened this premiere, and I really could not be more satisfied what we're getting. So we start off with Niska, and she's in Berlin, and she walks down the street into a nightclub. She stands around and hears a girl tell her that she'll hurt her ears if she stands too close to the speaker, and immediately we don't really know what's going on here, because with the last time we saw Niska, she took that flash drive, and she says she's seen her before. She doesn't dance or talk to anyone. Niska asks why she's talking to her then. The woman says she's not from here, and she's kind of unfriendly and rude, and she asks if she's British, and this woman's name is Astrid, and she then realized that she speaks English, and she says she was hoping she'd dance there, that's all, and it's cool if it's not her thing, and she asks if it is, and they leave the club and go outside. Now, this makes perfect sense why Niska actually would be into girls, because I know a lot of people this might be very jarring that all of a sudden Niska is a lesbian, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, think about season 1, when she tried to be, with guys, she ended up in this horrible horrible sex business where she was basically treated like a sex slave, and she was forced to do all these things that she really didn't want to do, and now she's giving women a try, because women is something she hasn't tried before. It might be something that she actually needs, and again, it just shows how much more self-sufficient the synthetics are being. It really showing how much she's evolving as a character, so I really did like seeing that. And this is less about, Niska trying to interact with this woman, and more about her kind of discovering herself, which I definitely did love. This is definitely going to be, I think, a big season of self-discovery for many of the characters, but Niska says the talk is mostly noise, and Astrid asks if she should shut up. Niska says no. They go onto a subway, go back to Astrid's apartment, where Niska cleans up her wound, and the woman goes up to her and kisses her, asks if she really wants this. Niska says she'll know when she doesn't, and they continue to make out. So immediately, you can see these two bonding very well. It's a very close relationship, but it's more for Niska a way of self-discovery, and I really did love seeing that. It's just another way to care about Niska in a way we didn't before, and I'm really loving the way the show's doing that. So the next morning, Niska goes into her room, sees a loose piece of wood, and she retrieves a black box from it. Now, we realize this is the black box that actually has a flash drive, because obviously we knew she took the flash drive. She doesn't want Astrid to know what she's up to, and Astrid asks her what she's doing in Berlin with just a bunch of dead white guys for company, and Niska says she was hoping they'd help her make a decision. Of course, that decision being, should she actually do something about this flash drive? Is it really the right thing to do? So Astrid asks about what. Niska says nothing, obviously because Niska doesn't want to know what's going on. So Astrid says while she's thinking she doesn't have work until 5, and asks if she wants to do something. They go out for lunch, and Niska asks who she was when she found out she liked women, and Astrid says that she was 9, and Niska says she was made that way, and the woman said it's hard enough to know what she wants if she has to know why she wants it too, and asks if this is what she came to Berlin to figure out, because all she said to her is that she came to figure out something. So she says a stone speaks more than hers. Niska asks if she had the power to create life, would she, and Astrid asks if she's really worried about kids and says that anyone can have a kid, and Niska says they can't know if the child wants to be born. Now, we know that Niska's obviously not talking about children. She's talking about more synthetics and turning these synthetics into actual humans. We know that they want these synthetics to not be, just synthetics. They want them to develop a brain. And she then goes out to see, basically, we see she goes to a synth, asks for 20 minutes, and she goes onto a computer and actually decides to upload the consciousness. And I love the fear in Niska. There's so much telling her here that this isn't going to work out and that this is a horrible idea. I mean, there's really no telling what's going to happen. I mean, really, anything can happen, but she goes for it and it completes, and she goes back to the synth, who continues to ask if he can help her. He seems completely unfazed by it, and I love this next scene where she goes out to see if it's worked, and some are self-reliant, others are completely unfazed by it. Like, others are, just doing their normal mundane thing, while others are trying to get away from their task. And we then see in Bolivia a synth who's working in the mining company. He starts to feel the effects of the consciousness, and he walks out. His boss asks where he's going. The synth says he wants to go up, and he goes to the elevator. We don't know what that's about, but that is immediately showing us that the consciousness is working, and I really did love the way that they showed that. That was a terrific opening, and we then cut to 6 weeks later back at the Hawkins house, and I was happy to see the Hawkins were back, because I'm not going to lie, I didn't really know if the Hawkins were going to still be in the show as much. I figured that we weren't going to see the Hawkins after what happened in Series 1. I knew we were going to see at least Maddie because of what ended up happening with the flash drive. Maddie knew that Niska took the flash drive and knew we were going to see her. I didn't know if we were going to see the Hawkins, and I'm happy to say the Hawkins do still play a role in the show. I seem to be one of the only people who like the Hawkins. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I really do love these characters, and I like them even more this season. They're definitely trying to do a lot more of them, and I was very impressed with it overall. But basically, they've recently moved, and they have this worker synth named Albert who's fixing up the house, and he introduces Laura to Nathan, who's part of the apprentice scheme, and will be working with him today. He tells you he's going to instruct him in grounding, and Maddie's watching a video presented by Milo Curie, who works at Qualia Global Systems, and they're developing the next generation of synthetic technologies, and Laura asks if she's doing anything she wouldn't understand. Maddie says she's hacking the Pentagon, and Laura asks if she has an early lecture. Maddie says she can get more done in the library, not in here, and Laura says they'll get there. So, obviously, you can tell that they're trying to move on from what happened, and Joe's fixing up the house. Laura goes up to him, asks him if he knows where the cafeteria is, and he says it's in a box. Laura tells him about Nathan, and he says it's a government thing, back to work scheme, it's all subsided, and she says it's a bit weird having a stranger in the house. She's not used to having him there, and he says Albert with a circular saw is okay. She says it doesn't feel like a fresh start, and he says it will, and tells her just give it time, because, yeah, not really much has changed. Yes, they've moved into a new house, but other than that, not really much else has happened. So Maddie leaves for school, and we then get the scene where Laura goes to Sophie to get her dressed for school, but she's already packed, and Laura asks her to promise not to become a teenager for a few more weeks. She sees a few new shoes and asks her where she found them. Sophie says that they were in a box. She's keeping them with hers until Mia comes back. So the entire episode, Sophie's under the intuition that Mia's going to come back at some point. Mia was so close to their family, there's no reason she wouldn't come back, but we can tell in this season that that is not exactly the path that Mia's going on. Because what Mia's doing is quite surprising. I thought that Mia was probably going to work with Leo and probably try to, maybe figure out stuff with him and things like that. That's not where she is, though. She actually is working at a cafe, and she's mopping the floor, and you can understand why. She wants to do what she can to make it seem like she is still one of those, programmed synths. We know she's not, but one of her colleagues, Ed, is on the phone. He tells Mia the place is dead and they might as well close up. He says he's going to see his mom, and to Ed, she is Anita still. She's acting like Anita, she's talking like a synth, and it's jarring to see, definitely, that she's acting like Anita, but you can understand why Mia's doing that. He closes up the cafe for the day. She says that he has mentioned on 3 occasions mother disliked the care unit's food, and he thanks her. She says that he should be charging more, and he gives her money, and he says he'll see her in the morning, and then calls her Anita. So we then meet a new synth named Hester, who's working in a power plant, and quickly goes through the consciousness, which gets her to break away from her job and go elsewhere. She goes into a locker, grabs her phone, and I really did love this character because unlike the other since we've seen the show, Hester is completely confused. I mean, she has no idea what's going on with her. Suddenly she's starting to act differently than she's ever acted before. You know, this isn't something she's been programmed to do. So basically, she's sees another synth named Hester who's also been abused, which makes us remember that there are thousands of these synthetics by the same name. And before anyone can catch her, she knocks at the boss, runs away. She goes onto her phone and texts an unknown number for help, so we don't really know what that's about, but Joe and Laura, we then find out, are actually in marriage counseling, and I was surprised to see Joe and Laura back together. I'm not gonna lie, I honestly thought Joe wasn't gonna be a part of the show anymore because of what ended up happening in Series 1, but I like the way that these two are basically trying to move on from that and doing what they can to try to, you know, stay in a happy marriage for their, not for them, but for their family. That's really what this is all about. They're doing it for their kids, and she asks if he's okay since he doesn't seem himself, asks if someone lost his mug at work again. The receptionist comes out and tells him that their counselor Marie is not there, but they do have a synth named Barbara. And she says to him it's either this or go home to the bomb sites. And Barbara tells Laura that in the last session she identified a key challenge for her, that being rebuilding trust in Joe. She really does not trust him right now, which is understandable because of his whole tryst with Mia. And she asks if she had the opportunity to reflect upon this further. Laura says she's been a bit busy with life, and Barbara says they're both exhibiting signs of anxiety, and if it helps them to relax, she can modulate her voice to a more soothing tone or accent, and they joke around for a bit. Barbara then asks Laura if she feels Joe has made a full and honest acknowledgement of his misdeeds, and Laura says no, she really does not feel that he's done anything, and Barbara says that they may have different perceptions of what the incident meant to the other, and Joe asks her how she can possibly presume to figure out emotions when she has none of her own, which is actually a good point to have. You know, synthetics aren't supposed to have emotions, and you definitely get the sense that Barbara is definitely starting to react to the congenist, and Barbara says she's accessing the anonymous transcripts and associated statistical analysis of over 38,000 counseling sessions of the cases of infidelity involving a sin. 66% of respondents report that a primary obstacle to reconciliation was an imbalance in the perceived impact and meaning of the acts or acts of infidelity. And Joe's complaining about her using stats, but Laura's actually okay with it, says that they're not the only people in this world to go through this, and she doesn't actually feel he understands what it meant to her, and she still feels like he doesn't really understand why he did it. And he says, you know, he was just drunk and lonely, and they hadn't had sex for ages because she was never there emotionally or physically, and he wanted to do something that would make him notice her, which, yeah, I mean, in hindsight is kind of a good idea, but he really did not do it in the best way. And I do like that we saw that Joe wasn't trying to cheat on Laura, like he was just trying to do it as a cry for help, and Barbara asks her if she understands that and if it feels truthful, and Laura does not answer, so things are really not great between Laura and Joe. I'm hoping they do make amends this season, but as you can see, things are not really great between them, and I don't know if Joe and Laura's marriage will ever really be the same again as we see in this episode. So Ed is then at the cafe cleaning up wood, and Mia looks through a notebook that is filled with all kinds of statistics, and after cleaning she asks Ed if the restoration is complete, and he says it's as close as he'll get, says the stain's not quite there, and she says it's very close to the original that appears in the photograph. He hands her the wood sharpener and tells her to feel it, says if she wasn't here he'd be talking to the cake stand, and she says she can see has proficiency level in this field, and he says he had a workshop in Dover with a friend, and then his mom got ill, and he asks if she wrote the numbers in the notebook and asks if they're right. She says if he refinances the manor, she proposed the adjusted income from the business will cover 80% of his mother's medical expense for the next 3 months. It's a short-term solution, and she says the debts will occur rapidly, and it will be advisable to sell within a year. So he says his mom and dad spent 30 years building this place up, and now it's worthless. And he says that this buys him time. He thanks her. She says she wanted to help, and he's confused since she's not supposed to want anything, really. I mean, again, this is something a synth isn't supposed to want, and she says her programming compels her to adapt where appropriate informal patterns of speech heard frequently in her environment, but to use the word want was misleading since she doesn't feel desire. Of course, you know, to him, he thinks that she doesn't, which we know she does. So Hester's still hiding out and goes under deck, and we realize that she called Max and Leo, and this was a great reintroduction to these two. Max introduced himself and says to not be frightened, says that she's experiencing a catastrophic malfunction, says self-repair is impossible and asks if they can resolve her issue. Leo says she doesn't need fixing and asks why she ran. She says they tried to power her down and she didn't want them to, and Max says it's not a malfunction. Some released a piece of unique code, found its way into her, and made her conscious, and now she acts and feels like a human. And even though we know all this stuff already, it's cool to see Leo and Max teach someone about this, you know, someone who's a little bit more more unknown, someone who's not, as, as acclimated to the ways of being a human. I like seeing that with Hester. I'm interested in seeing where she's going to go here, because she asked if they can verify this. The synth who is in the mine says he can, and we find out that his name is Ten, which Ten, I love this character. If very brief, he was definitely very fun to have around, and Max and he came a very long way to join them. Ten speaks to her in Spanish, says he hopes she understands the basic industrial model. He was never fitted with the language package, but he's learning, and Leo says he's the same as her, same with Max, and Hester says he's human. She says that there were 160 units operational at the plant, and no others seemed to malfunction. Everything else seemed okay, so why this unit? And Leo says they don't really know yet, so I like that they're actually kind of unknown about what the consciousness really does. He just knows that they're rare, over 1,000, and Ten says he became conscious 37 days ago, and he was like how she is now, unable to process sensory data. He hit on ships and lorries to come here and find Leo and Max, and they have helped him, and they will help her too. So Leo asks what he said. Max says nice things, so you get the sense that Max doesn't really know what the hell he's saying, and she introduced herself, and Leo lets her know she can choose her own, and Ten says he's considering 3 different names, but is also attracted to the word radiator, even though he understands that it's not a name, and she asks if designations are relevant, and this scene just reminds us how fun seeing synthetics interact are, and especially synthetic like Ten or Hester, who aren't as capable of human qualities and aren't as, fully adapted to that yet. It was just a lot of fun to watch, and it was a nice little spin that we didn't really get to see last series, and I like seeing that here. So she asks if designations are relevant. Leo says yes, and Hester's owners are then calling out for her. They want her back. Leo is able to get them away for the time being, and we see that, he asks who they work for, and basically he says that look, he's going to shut them down. They think that he's just there because, again, to them, Leo is just a human. We know, obviously, he's half human, half synth, but to them, he's just a human that's there to put her on the black market. And Max says she's confused. They're both humans, but they're telling her different things. And, Hester is very confused. She doesn't know what to do. In the end, she decides to go with them because she knows that she'll just be more safe. And she says they do want to use them. They are lying. She takes out of the guards an anonymous sharpshooter, then ends up killing 10, which was shocking to see, but I understand why they killed off 10. There really wasn't much else they could do with him. Max tells them to get to the van. The sharpshooter continues shooting at them till they leave, and this is a whole other aspect to the synths we haven't seen. I mean, they literally want to kill the synthetics, which is crazy to see, but Joe's in at work, and this is by far one of the most compelling parts of the episode, is this thing with Joe at work, because many synthetics are working there. He meets Gavin, who is his boss, and Gavin says that Gina told him he just moved. Joe says because their eldest has gone to college and they wanted to keep her at home, as well as having a smaller mortgage, and Gavin says that's great. Joe asks what that is. Gavin tells him to have a seat, and he sits down. Gavin tells him the company's implementing a standardization programming across all operations, and as part of that, they have to ask themselves if their human regional managers are the most cost-effective solution, and we find out that he's actually being replaced with a synth. So yeah, actually Joe is not going to be working there anymore. He's being replaced with a synth, and decisions been made to make this a non-human role going forward in the Southeast, and we get this great scene with Joe. He gives this monologue where he talks about how there's no possible way he could fire him because the job isn't about the job, it's about making relationships, and knowing all the workers' families and their kids' birthdays, but Joe soon sees that the synth has already programmed to know all of that. Even though the synth doesn't have an emotional connection, the synth is as well knowledge in that field as Joe is. He knows everything to know about every employee, more than Joe probably knew, and you can definitely see how much this scares Joe. Like, Joe, as much as he is used to synths, there are still some things that definitely do startle him, and this is definitely one of them. So Joe says a few years ago he was thinking of leaving, and Basically, he told him his place here would always be safe. Gavin says it's nothing to do with him, just things changed, and Joe says that's what 14 years looks like, tells him they'll come here soon for him, and Gavin says he has equity, and Joe says that won't stop them, and yeah, Joe's right. I mean, as much as Gavin thinks that he is in control of all this, he's not. He's not the one who's controlling, when are the synths going to work and when are they not. This is just something that's going to eventually happen, and that's something that they're going to have to accept. So Max, Leo, and Hester are driving away. Max says the 10 didn't even decide on a name. Leo tells Hester to turn up her sharing, and as he disconnects her wires, Max tells him there's someone in the back. Max sees him, says they know where they are, and they should change route now. Leo then tells Hester to put him back in the van, and Max says that they should leave him, and Leo says he's coming with them. They'll discuss it later. Hester tosses the synth into the van, and Astrid then goes up to Niska, and basically they have sex shortly after. She touches her hand and tells her that she's hers now, and she then sees the bandage on her, asks to see the scar, and tells her there's nothing she could show that would make her like her any less. Tells her when she touched her, she knows someone has hurt her, and Niska then gets up from the bed. She asks her if she's ashamed of this after 6 weeks, and Niska says no. Astrid asks why does she know the people that she rides the bus with better than her, and Niska tells her to stay, and Astrid says she would like to know her and walks away. She wants to know who Niska really is, but Niska is not coming cleaner. She's told her very brief things so far, and she wants a lot more information than that, and you definitely do care about this relationship, even though we've only seen it, for about, 2 or 3 scenes. It's been 6 weeks, and you get the sense these two definitely have furthered their relationship, and, Astrid is willing to take it further, but because of all this information that Niska's withholding from her, Niska is very much a blank slate, and that really is frustrating Astrid, and I really was surprised by how invested they got into this relationship only after 1 episode, and I hope we see more of this going forward. So then we get introduced to another one of the more major things about this season, is that we're not just exploring Britain, we're actually going to explore America, because we go to the California Science Institute, and we meet Dr. Athena Morrow, played brilliantly by Carrie-Anne Moss, who I can't believe they got that talent on the show. I really can't believe they were able to get her. But, they did get quite a big star last year. I can't think of his name right now, but they definitely did. They got him last year, and now they have Carrie-Anne Moss, and her employee tells him that they've already optimized 99.8% capacity. He says Q takes up about 6%, so deleting him would mean another synthetic, V, could switch out a little, and she makes it clear they're not deleting Q. He asks if she's figured out a way to stabilize him. She says she hasn't, but she's not giving up on him, and he tells her to rent some outside rack space, and he says they're over budget already. He says he'll make some calls. She then calls out to her AI V, and she asks if she's feeling a little crowded in there. V says her thoughts are she has unsorted data, and that appears redundant. It could be deleted, and she says it's not redundant. It makes her who she is. And Athena asks if she's alright. V says she's unable to fully consider the implications of their conversation, and Athena says she'll get there and tells her to go dormant. So again, you can tell Athena knows about these synthetics. She's kind of created her own. That was interesting to see. It was kind of a different form than a synthetic that we haven't seen before, and I definitely did like seeing that. But Niska's then on a train, sees an article about a synth tram driver abandoning humans to look at the birds, and it's this great scene where she realizes that this actually is working and that she was successful. But she gets off the tram, goes to Astrid, and tells her she's needed elsewhere. Astrid says she's needed here. Niska says she told her that they should be responsible for themselves and shows others the way, and she's right and says she has to go and says goodbye to her. And I really hope this isn't the end of Niska and Astrid. I really did like these two as a couple, and I hope we see more of them throughout the series. I'm thinking we are, because I read that Astrid's a recurring character, but I hope that's not just recurring as in this episode. I hope we see more of her throughout the series. But Athena's employee comes in to tell her that Milo Curry is there. Of course, we just heard about Milo Curry from the beginning of the episode when Maddie was watching him, and she tells him to send him in. Milo goes in, apologizes for turning up unannounced. She says that she should have returned his messages, and he says he's read every paper she's published, even understood a few of them, and sees her 1260s and says it's a reliable stack, asks how many of her neural nets she can run on here, and she says that she has 2 networks active, and he has to talk to V, and she introduces him to Milo, and V introduces herself to Milo. He asks if she's sentient. V says she doesn't believe so, and Athena tells her to go dormant, and long story short, they go over this, very long, elongated scene where we eventually realize that Milo wants to recruit her. He wants to bring her, to work for him, and that's something that, at Qualia, she wants her to work for him at Qualia, and that's something that she is very on the fence about, because she feels the state's dead. She feels that, she has a good position there. There's no reason that she want to leave, but after he basically tells her that he's got some lawyers and she can come see for herself, that she might not just be the first choice. She might actually might not have a standing start. She might have a very good position for her, and she should just come see what it's like. So he leaves. V asks her why she asked her to lie to him, because she tells Milo specifically that she doesn't believe in this idea of conscious sins, but once he leaves, we see that's obviously not true. She does believe that there definitely are, sins that have this consciousness in them, and I'm interested in seeing really where that's going to go, because definitely there's more going on to than Athena than we think, and again, that's a perfect way of how to develop this compelling character that we didn't see last season, but I like that we are getting what we saw of her in this episode. So Leo brings the man they found back to the hideout, asks him who he is and who he's working for. The man says he's been doing security work a long time. He thinks he should let him go unless he's done something very wrong. He doesn't see him finishing him off anytime soon, so they should just wrap it up. And Leo goes back to Hester, and Max says he's not talking. He doesn't even know if he knows anything, just a hired gun, and Max says they have to let him go. Leo says they need to find out who they are and what they're doing here. He says that they killed their friend, he's not coming back, and Mia goes to them, tells them not to tell her about the man. Mia asks him what happened, and I like seeing Mia back in her usual form. We see that Mia is, entirely consciousness, and she asks where 10 is, and Leo says he's gone. They shot him. Mia tells Max to take Hester inside the house, and Mia goes to him and says she told him that this was unsafe. He says to blame Niska. She says they don't know if she's the one that released the code, and it's not his job to save them, and he asks if she'd rather Hester was alone somewhere, scared and vulnerable, and he tells her they're waking up more and more every day, becoming just like her. The ones who run are killed, and are they supposed to just let it happen? Because obviously, no, they're not just going to let it happen. He wants to do something about it, and she says that 10 would be alive. He says that she doesn't think he knows that. Hester watches them. Max tells her this was 10's charger, and now it's hers, and she asks Max if they hate each other. Max says they love each other. Mia tells Leo that they've been safe for months. They're making a home, and Leo says that they're hiding like they always have. She's the one putting them at risk of being around humans one slip, and she'll give them all away. Someone will see through the dumb synth act, and she says that they won't, and they need supplies, and if she doesn't work, then they'll have to steal. And he says that they both know that's not why she does it, and she says that he's right. She wants to be around people, but she wants to find out who she is, not who she was made for, but who she may become. Who is she actually? Sure, she is Mia, but is that really who she was meant to be, or does she have another life? And I think she's very compelled by what she's doing with Ed, which he obviously tells her is not a good idea, but he's not going to try to stop her. So Hester tells Max that there's too much contradictory data and nothing makes sense. It's excessive sensory feedback. It serves no useful function. And he says emotions have functions. So I'm interested in seeing really where that's going to go. So Athena does decide to go to Qualia headquarters, and she decided to work for him. Quickly lets her know they're on first name basis, and she says to disappoint her quickly so they can all get back to work. He gives her a tour, and she asks what's going on here. He introduces her to the synth named Artie, who Artie is very different from the other synths we meet. This one has a much more childlike, whimsical nature where he's just coloring, and he says he's not a mod, and he's kind of denying what he really is. And he talks about how, 7:17 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, a regular system update was corrupted with code from an unknown source, and basically tells her all about the consciousness being leaked. So she hands him his crayons, and she asks Milo if he found him like this, says that this is a superficial hack she'll know in 30 seconds. He says she will, and then he needs her to figure out how he got like this, and then reverse engineer the process so Qualia can market them, and she asks if this is the only one. He says it's not, and he says that's good because she's going to need to take it apart. So now we see why Milo really needs her. He needs her to obviously figure out what's going on, how his consciousness is happening. I'm interested in seeing really what's going to happen there. But then we get to the end of the episode, and I love the way this episode ended, because we go back to the Hawkins, and Laura lets them know that while things haven't been perfect, they can still be a good thing for them. They have to move on. Maddie says she can, and says they were part of something and saved them. She can't move on from that, and why would she want to? And Sylvie's convinced that Mia will come back. Toby says that Maddie has a point, says it's pretty hard to be normal when they know what they know, stuff no one else in the world does, and yeah, that's true. I mean, there's so much they know. They're not the only ones that know. Toby just thinks that, and Laura says that moving on might be hard, but they have each other, and that's what matters. So Joe then tells him the news that he's just been made redundant, but he's going to try to get another job, and says that Laura's too clever for her own good, so she's got a great job and nothing will change, and if all else fails, he'll just fall back on his modeling career. And Toby says he's sorry. Maddie asks why. Joe says, why does she think? And, obviously it's because of the fact that he's fired, and he's not going to be able to get it back. So later that night, Laura asks Joe why he didn't tell her first. He says he wanted her to have a good opinion of him right now, show, and getting fired kind of works against that, since at least he's sunk a little lower. In Maddie's eyes, and didn't think he could manage that, but he did, and she says he'll be fine. And we know that obviously Maddie was not on good terms with him because she knows of what he did with Mia, so she's not very happy with him, and she's even more pissed at him now. So they then hear the doorbell ring, and Joe asks what time it is. Laura says 4:30 a.m. Joe asks if she has any idea who it could be, and we find out that it's actually Niska, who asks if she can come in. She says if she was there to kill them all, she would have rang the bell. Such an awesome line. Niska is such a badass just in that line, and Laura asks what she wants. Niska says she told her she should face justice for killing that man. She's right, but she wants to be tried as a human, would be recognized as a conscious being with rights equal to theirs if they'll help her, which means she wants Laura to be her defense attorney, and that is the way this episode ends. Really compelling stuff overall, but let's get into this episode and where I think we're going to go from here. So really, there is a lot to talk about in this episode, because wow, I mean, what a premiere this really was. So much to unpack, really, so much to unpack in one episode. Let's first talk about this trial, because I love where this is headed. I love that Niska, is really wanting to, she feels guilty about what she did, which is completely understandable why she feels guilty. Yes, what she did was bad that she killed a human, but she doesn't want to be tried as a synth because she knows she'll get off. People want synths in the world. They need to use them for certain purposes. She wants to be tried as a human and actually be treated, guilty, because she feels like a human. I like the direction that that's going in. Is Laura going to agree to helping her? How are the Hawkins going to get involved? That's something I'm definitely interested in getting into. And seeing this court case again, that perfectly makes it stand out from the first season. It shows very well this isn't going to be a complete redo of the first season, which it's not at all. This is a completely different type of season, and I absolutely love that, as well as what's going on with Leo, Max, and Mia. Because Mia, clearly, she's not okay with Leo and Max are doing. She feels it's very dangerous, but Leo feels the same way about Mia, because Mia is kind of copying her life as Anita. She's pretending to be this synth, and that she does have this program in her when really she doesn't. She's not that, she's not gonna beg to his every command. I think pretty soon Ed's gonna find out. It's only gonna be a matter of time before he finds out, and I think she is kind of compelled to that life. Like, she feels like she should be with Ed. I think she genuinely enjoys her relation with Ed. I think she kind of wants to be with him. I'm interested in getting into more of their overall relation. I think that definitely is very interesting. The whole thing going on with Joe, with him being fired, it is quite a shock to see, but it does make sense. I mean, after all the synths are doing pretty much everything, I've said this before, it's only gonna be a matter of time before synths ends up taking the world, which, I mean, is definitely a fear of the Hawkins. As much as they do want to protect the synths, they need to realize that eventually they're going to take over, and they're going to basically be the mass population of this world. I mean, he said it best to Gavin that, just because he has equity, it doesn't mean anything. They'll still find reasons to get rid of him, because a synth can just do it that much better. They can process data faster, they can get information in a better way, and they don't have many emotions, so they can do whatever the hell they want to them, and they're not going to care, because they don't have emotions. At least they think so. So I think that definitely as well is very interesting. Now with the consciousness out, that adds a whole new layer to the show, though, because as we see, more and more synthetics are becoming conscious, and Hester is one I think that is very conflicted as to what to do with this information, because yes, she is conscious now, and I think she's happy about that, but she doesn't really know what to do. I mean, all her life she's been commanded by all these different type of individuals, and now she's forced to be on her own, and I think she's very conflicted with where to go from there. So I mentioned seeing where Hester's going to go, and then everything going on with Athena and Milo. They clearly want to get more information. Athena is clearly hiding from Milo that she does in fact know more about this than she seems to. So what's really going on with that? Why is she hiding this from Milo? Why is she telling V? What's the deal between her and V? There's a much deeper relationship there that we don't know. I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there. And then the only thing really to talk about, well, there are definitely a couple things to talk about. There's definitely a lot, like I said, to have in this episode. The whole thing going on with Sophie, she feels that Mia's coming back. I like the family's attachment to these synths. Like, they feel like they don't really have much of a purpose without them. It's hard to move on from them. They feel this is kind of their duty to protect these synths. And yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think Toby and Maddie and Sophie, they have developed a connection. Joe and Laura definitely have, but they're trying to move on from it because they know this isn't forever. They know that the synths are in fact going to take over. And I think they know that inevitably they're going to have to start turning against them. So I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there. Because of course they do want to help Niska, because Niska, they want to treat her like a human. But who knows really what's going to happen there. I think that's interesting. And then as far as Niska and Astrid go, I hope we see Astrid again. I really did love their overall relationship. I thought it was very well done. The other thing I really did love about this episode is the real scope of the consciousness. I mean, we've seen already how powerful that the consciousness really is. You know, it can turn an everyday mundane synth into a very powerful, empowered human, and they don't know how this is happening. And I love that even someone like Niska, who was set up to be basically the villain of this season, because, you know, she took the flash drive, we thought she was going to use it for her own villainous intent, but instead, no, she took a chance because she was instead very eager to let other people be conscious. You know, she wants them to have that ability to act like a human. You can really understand where they're coming from with that. And I love the more focused tone on the synth. This season seems like it's going to be very synth heavy, and it was definitely in Series 1, but Series 1 was a lot more of the Hawkins family. Like, they definitely were the main storyline. It looks like it's the opposite this series. Like, Niska and, you know, Mia and Leo, they are our main storyline, but even those characters, they don't even know what's going on in the consciousness. And I think it's interesting that even the synths, they don't know how the consciousness is really happening. They don't really know how it works. They just know it is, and they're just taking a chance. And I do think it adds a much more vulnerable layer to their characters. We already do love these characters, but I think we're going to get a much more deeper look into who they are overall, and I can't wait to see really where that's going to go. The other thing they're really touching upon very well is that every single synth, as we know, yes, they have a purpose and a name, but that's not really who they want to be. Who do they actually want to be? Who are these synths besides, you know, what their owners have named them? Who are they beyond those little mundane tasks that they've been, you know, forced to do? What else are they besides that? And I think it's something else this series is going to expand very well, and I can't wait to see the way they do that as well this season. But overall, guys, this was an incredible premiere. I really did love the way this premiere was done. My only complaint is that it was very convoluted. There was a lot going on this episode, and that's great. I love that everyone really did have something going on, but this was very convoluted. There was a lot going on, and we even didn't, there's still two characters we have yet to meet. We didn't see what Pete and Karen are up to. We didn't see either of those two characters. I'm sure we'll see them, but we don't know what they're up to yet, which was interesting. It was kind of daring the way the show did that, but they did do a very good job of setting up this conflict, and more importantly, expanding the world. We're not just focusing on, you know, the British and things like that. We're going all around the world, and this show truly is becoming a global show where we're seeing, you know, how these synthetics are, you know, affecting humans around the world, such as in California with Athena and Milo. That's a whole other layer to the show that we haven't seen before, and I'm really loving the direction that that's going in. But it was quite convoluted, and I think there were definitely some things we could have seen a bit more of, i.e. Niska and Astrid. We could have seen a lot more of them. We could have seen more of Mia and Ed, but because there was just so much going on in this first episode, it was hard to, you know, remember things that were going on. But I will say I was definitely, you know, it was easy to keep track. But I feel like in the other episodes that they keep this very frenetic tone, I'm worried that we're gonna, you know, things are just gonna get very confusing, and that we're gonna forget things that happened, and that it's just gonna be very hard to follow what's going on because there's gonna be so much going on. I do think eventually this is all gonna connect as one, but I'm very interested in seeing really how that's gonna happen. I think it's very daring for the show to bring in like 50 more characters, but they did it, and it worked quite well. Overall, guys, this show, it reminded me why I loved Humans as much as I do. I really did enjoy this first episode. I thought this was a very strong premiere overall, and I am going to give the series premiere, the series 2 premiere of Humans a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. So overall, guys, made the series premiere of Humans. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. Do you like where the series is headed? How would you compare it to Series 1? If you guys have seen the series, I know the entire end Series 2 is aired already on, you know, back in the UK in like November or something like that. So if you guys have watched it, please don't tell me what happens. I am so compelled with this series. Just like The Missing, I'm not going to binge this series. I'm just going to take it once a week so I can review it at the pace that AMC is airing it. I just want to do it that way because I just don't have time to review it in any other way. That's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for a movie review, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.